Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Cooking for a Picky Eater. Today we are going to be making the Picky Eater's version of chicken marsala. I hope you enjoy this recipe as much as we do. Before we start cooking, let's talk about our ingredient list. We are going to begin with boneless, skinless chicken breasts. We are not going to be using chicken tenders, and we are not using chicken cutlets. We are using the full chicken breast. We are going to cut them into strips and pound them nice and thin. Then we have a little bit of flour that we're going to season with salt and pepper that's going to be used for dredging. For our sauce, we have a couple of vegetables. The first thing that we're going to be using is something called elephant garlic. It tastes like garlic. It's a little bit milder in taste. What I like about it is, particularly if you have someone who doesn't like mushrooms, you can slice this and it's not going to be a punch in the face like garlic would be. It's going to add some nice texture to your sauce, something that's going to look really nice as you plate it. But like I said, it's not as pungent as garlic. It's actually in the leek family. It's more related to the onion than it is to garlic. And what I like about it is you don't have a ton of little cloves to have to peel. You've got this one big clove to peel. And then we are going to add some shallot to the recipe. And as I mentioned, Sean does not like mushrooms. So we're not going to be putting mushrooms directly into the sauce, but I do have a hack for that if there are people in the family who do like mushrooms. We are going to be serving this over egg white noodles, and so I'm going to have to boil some water for that, and I'm going to show you how that's important for our hack for those that like mushrooms in just a little bit. To season the sauce, we're going to use black pepper, tarragon, a little bit of basil, salt and pepper. We're going to be incorporating some chicken stock as well as a sweet Marsala wine. My personal favorite is private stock, and that's only because they do sell it in the smaller bottles, and that way if you don't have chicken Marsala that often, you only have to buy one bottle. It gets you through 2 meals. So hang tight. I'm going to get some of this prep work done, and I'll be right back. I went ahead and prepped our vegetables. I sliced the elephant garlic into mushroom slice-sized pieces. And I also just cut rings out of the shallot so that it's going to stay mostly together. In addition, I have some cremini mushrooms to use for my part of the dish that I sliced up and put to the side. And then I went and got a different cutting board. I have a cutting board for vegetables, a cutting board for red meats, and a separate cutting board for poultry, because you don't want to be spreading salmonella around, especially if you're going to be prepping onions and garlic that are not going to spend a lot of time in the sauce. And so what I did was I took the chicken breasts out of the large package, and I highly recommend that if you have a picky eater that will only eat a couple of types of protein, to invest in a vacuum sealer. By buying your protein in bulk, you do save a lot of money. At a regular grocery store, you're going to find that chicken breasts about this size are going to be $1.99 a pound. If you go to a super center like a Sam's Club or a Costco, you can get these just over $1 a pound, which is what I did. And then vacuum seal or put into freezer paper and mark the dates, put them in your freezer. It will save you a ton of money. So I've got 3 large chicken breasts here. And what I'm going to do is just take a look at the outside of the chicken breast and cut off some of this fat that's just hanging around on the outside. Nobody really wants to take a bite into grizzle or some fat. So we're just going to trim that up just a little bit. And then we're going to cut this into 1-inch strips. And out of these large chicken breasts, we're probably going to get between 2 and 3 good cuts out, 3 or 4 rather, good cuts out of this chicken breast. And on this last part of the chicken breast, where the toughest part of the protein is, I'm just going to cut a little bit of that off. It'll make it easier to pound the chicken. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take these chicken strips now that we have, and we're going to pound them to about 1/4 of an inch thickness. And what that's going to do is it's going to create wonderful chicken cutlets for us to use in our chicken marsala. I am going to season up this flour with some salt and pepper. I'm going to get these dredged. I've got the pot of water heating up for our noodles, And I've got the pan over here heating up on medium heat. We want that oil to be at a gradual temperature. We don't want it to be super hot because we don't want the outsides of these chicken breasts to burn before they have a chance to cook all the way through. So I'm going to get this started over here. I'm going to get the chicken into the flour, and I'll be right back. I went ahead and finished pounding all of the chicken breasts, and I went ahead and dredged them in the seasoned flour. Anytime that you're working with raw animal protein, you want to make sure that you clean up your cutting board and your surfaces almost immediately. You do not want to spread that foodborne illness around. Our water has come up to a boil, and I have those cremini mushrooms inside of a vegetable steamer, because if any of these touch the sauce, Sean will know that they were there and he will not eat it. So before we boil our pasta, what I'm going to do for myself is I'm going to put this vegetable steamer inside of our boiling water, and I'm going to let that cook for about 3 minutes to soften and cook our mushrooms for myself and for anybody else who wants the mushrooms. Then I'll remove them from the water before I make the sauce and before I boil the pasta, and then those will be available for anyone who does like mushrooms in your family. Got my oil over here heating over medium heat, and as soon as you can start to feel the temperature coming off of your pan, it is ready to go. So I have, out of the 3 chicken breasts, I got 10 good-sized chicken cutlets. Some of them are smaller than others. This will feed a family of 2 adults and 2 kids with maybe a little bit of leftovers. But this will probably be good enough for 3 adults. So I would say probably when you're calculating 1 chicken breast per person. And then you're going to go ahead and you're not going to put a lot of oil in this pan. You're going to brown both sides of the chicken. And then once both sides of your chicken are browned, you're going to remove them from the heat and put them to the side. There's more steps that have to be done. You want to get a little bit of color on here, but definitely you don't want it to get too dark or burnt. This will be cooked again in the sauce, so you don't have to worry about bringing it up to 165 at this point, which is the safe cooking temperature for chicken. So let me get these all in here. I'll get these started, and I'll be back as soon as I get all of our chicken browned. Alright, I have my chicken browned, not too brown, and I have a pan here that's got maybe about a teaspoon of olive oil left in it. To that, we need to add a little bit more fat in order to create a roux to begin the sauce. So we're going to add about a half stick of unsalted butter, and we're going to melt that in the pan. And at this point, you're going to want to, if it starts looking like it's getting too brown too fast, cut the heat off on the burner entirely so that you don't burn this. This is looking pretty good. We're going to save some of that dredging flour, and don't worry, this is going to cook. We're going to add about 1.5 tablespoons to 2 tablespoons of flour to our pan at this point, and we're going to create a roux. And what we're going to do is we're just going to mix this around in here, and we need to remove the uncooked taste from the flour before we do anything else. So we're just working this around here. We're scraping some of the bits of chicken and flour from the bottom of the pan. There's a lot of flavor there. We don't want to eliminate any of that. At this point, we are going to add in our vegetables. I have the sliced shallot and the sliced elephant garlic. That's going to go into here right now. If your whole family likes mushrooms and they're not an issue, you would throw your raw mushrooms in at this point. And all we're doing is we're going to cook this just a little bit. We're not trying to cook our vegetables at all. We're getting their flavor incorporated into this, and we are cooking off that uncooked flour taste. Alright, I'm going to turn this burner back on here to about medium heat because it's going to simmer for 10 minutes once we reintroduce the chicken. I'm going to add to this a half bottle of Marsala wine. If you're cooking on a gas stove, cut the burner off before you do this. Alcohol and an open flame do not mix. So right here I'm adding about a half a bottle of the Marsala wine. And I'm going to add a little bit of chicken stock. Now, there's no exact amount of chicken stock to let you know. It all depends on how heavy-handed you are when you're flouring your chicken and how much of that flour came off, how much oil is left over in the pan. There's no real exact measurement for that. You're going to add that in, and once this comes back up to a simmer, you're going to see how thick this sauce is, and that will gauge whether or not you want to add more liquid. You're going to want to taste at this point before you reintroduce this partially cooked chicken. You're going to check for salt. You're going to see if it's salty enough. If it's too thick, don't add the salt until you're finished adding either a little bit more marsala or a little bit of chicken stock. The chicken salt has some salt in it, and that's going to change your seasoning. So I'm going to let this come back up to a simmer, check how thick it is, and I'll be right back. Okay, I have us back up to a simmer here. I've checked for salt. It's looking pretty good. You've got to make sure that your sauce is a little thinner than it's going to be when you're finished. You are going to be cooking this an additional 10 minutes with the chicken in. This is looking great. Before I reintroduce the chicken, I'm going to add a half a teaspoon of tarragon. This is a wonderful flavor with the chicken marsala. And I'm going to add a little bit of basil, probably another half teaspoon of basil. Okay, we're going to give that a stir. And at this point, we are going to add back in our chicken cutlets. And these are going to cook in this sauce for about 10 minutes, uncovered. You do not want this to be too rapidly simmering. You want to make sure that it's not going to break apart your chicken. Just enough to thicken the sauce a little bit and to bring your chicken up to temperature. If you want to stick a thermometer into your chicken, it should reach 165 degrees for it to be safe for consumption. I'm going to let this cook for 10 minutes. I'm going to throw my noodles in. They take about 8 minutes, and we'll put this all together in just a moment. At this point, our sauce has thickened beautifully. I'll see if I can get you in here to see a little bit better. Our sauce has thickened beautifully. We've taken our chicken out. It looks wonderful. So you can see at this point we have enough sauce to put over top of our noodles. But if for whatever reason you are not going to be serving this with noodles, it's just as good with a potato and a vegetable. What you can do at this point, if you want to extend this recipe to another meal, and your family does like mushrooms, you can add a can of cream of mushroom soup to the leftover sauce at this point, put it in the refrigerator, and heat this back up, put it over top of a pound steak, which would be like a Salisbury steak. That would be absolutely delicious. You can cook some hamburgers and put that into this. That would be absolutely delicious as well. Just a couple of ideas if you wanted to really extend this recipe. If not, this would be the last step. The chicken is out. The sauce is ready. We'll wait a couple more minutes for that pasta to finish, and I'll show you what the finished product looks like. All right, the pasta has finished cooking, so let's put this together to see how it looks. I'm going to take some of that drained pasta, and I'm going to put it on a plate. This one's going to be for me. So what I'm going to do for myself at this point is serve up some of the chicken. Okay, I've got some nice pieces of chicken on there. I'm going to take some of the mushrooms that I had cooked earlier, and I'm going to add some of the mushrooms onto my chicken. And then to finish the whole thing, I'm going to spoon over the pasta and over my chicken some of that delicious, thick sauce that has those big pieces of shallot in it and the elephant garlic. And this is absolutely delicious. It's one of our favorite meals, and I think your picky eater will absolutely enjoy this. You have a wonderful night, and we'll see you soon.